Glad to hear it. Okay, so let's go ahead and read Chapter 4. In our first act, this mineralite will lift a boulder 3 times larger and 10 times heavier than his own body over his head. The ringmaster waved the bulky man forward. He wore a red strength stone on a chain around his neck. The man closed his eyes and breathed, reaching out with his mind to connect to the power stone. The pendant etched a geometric pattern of red energy over his skin, and he dug his fingers into the very matter of the boulder. His muscles bulged as he lifted it off the ground and over his head. The elementy portion of the crowd let out their collective held breaths and cheered. The mineralites were harder to please. There were many different power stones, and each color granting the mineralite who wore them distinctive abilities. The power stones were their birthright. Oh, sorry. It is hard to appreciate something you live with day in and day out for your entire life. How an ability would make my life easier. Sarah whispered a prayer to the Creator to forgive her jealousy. The spotlight shifted to a vintage elementy woman in an elaborate floral costume. Green elemental dust sprang up from her fingertips, wrapping around small pebbles laying in a pile. She took a step into thin air, and the column of pebbles rose to meet her feet. I've never seen anyone use earth elements like that, Kemdara Imogen whispered in awe. The performer climbed higher and higher until the column swayed underneath her. She used the momentum from the fall to launch herself onto the spotlight platform. The fire-controlling acrobat that had been there before had disappeared. The ringmaster stepped out and asked, "How is everyone enjoying themselves?" Sarah cheered and clapped with the audience. The ringmaster cupped his hand to his ears. I'm sorry, what was that?" The crowd cheered even louder. Sebastian tried to cover his ears without drawing too much notice. "That's more like it," the ringmaster grinned. "For our final act, it is my pleasure to introduce the astonishing fire masters of the illustrious Aeolian Plains." All the lights went out in a flash. Orange elemental dust lit a hidden pile of kindling underneath the spotlight platform. A man wearing a ghoulish red mask, loincloth, and fur boots skittered out from behind the bonfire. As soon as he saw the audience, he tried to frighten them by beating his fists against the ground. Embers flew into the air with each beat. When the audience wasn't frightened by this, the man reached for the fire, his elemental dust pulling the wispy tendrils of fire into a sphere that hovered above the palm of his hand. With a twist of his wrist, the spear of fire flew towards the crowd. Cries and gasps rang out through the audience. Sebastian jumped to shield Sahara with his body. People left their seats to scatter towards the exit. Elemental dust grasped the burning flame, making it hover in front of the audience. A woman wearing a white angelic mask stepped into the light, her hand outstretched towards the spear of fire. Sebastian shuffled back into his seat. Sarah smiled and reached out to hold his hand. She whispered, "Thank you for protecting me." Sebastian blushed. It was just a reflex. Sarah bit her lip to keep her giggle from escaping and focused on the performance. The angelic woman sent the fire spinning back towards the ghoulish man. He caught the flame and extinguished it. He crouched low to the ground and tilted his head, almost as if he had posed a silent question. He's playing an animalian. The woman in the white mask offered her hand. The animalian actor struck the ground, the embers flying through the air. She took a step back, but did not change her offer of friendship. The animalian cackled. The sound was so silent. The sound was so strange in this previously silent play. He formed another sphere of fire and hurled it in her direction. Sarah gasped and covered her mouth. The fire hit the woman and burnt her costume. Sebastian squeezed her hand, and Sarah wondered who was reassuring whom. The woman cringed in an exaggerated mimicry of pain. She put her hands over where the fire had scorched her costume. A man adorned with a clockwork mask walked to the ring and squatted by the fire to warm his hands. He squinted at the other 2 actors with suspicion. The new performer represents the mineralite, so the woman must represent the elementi. As soon as the ghoulish man noticed the newcomer, he leapt towards him. The 2 men wrestled for possession of the fire. Their fighting extinguished the fire. Darkness blanketed the tent. The sounds of heavy breathing of the fire masters filled the space. From the aerialist platforms, drums beat out a rhythm, reminding Sarah of her own harried heartbeat. A haze of orange elemental dust lit the fire masters. That much power could burn the tent down with all of us inside. The woman swept her hand through the air and attacked the ghoulish men with a blaze of fire. She followed by kicking embers into his face. This performance is much more violent than the shows at the other elementy festivals. Sarah whispered to Sebastian. The spectacle overwhelmed her. The elemental dust made her skin warm. Her heart beat in her throat, and she held onto Sebastian's arm as an anchor. The sound of burning fire clashed with the noises of humans fighting. Light and fire danced through the air, somehow managing not to set anything on fire. Fire streaked through the air, pulled by a string of elemental dust, forming shapes in their wake. The mineralite actor pressed his palms together and combined his twin flames into a single larger sphere of fire. He sent the white fire towards the Animalian. The Animalian redirected the fire and sent it towards the Elementi woman. She tumbled out of the way, leaving nothing between the audience and the fire sphere. The mineralite pulled the fire back like a puppeteer pulling the strings of his puppet. The Elementi pulled the heat from the ashes on the ground and formed a new fire sphere. Instead of trying to beat the Animalian on their own, the Elementi woman and the mineralite man worked together. Their combined blasts sent the Animalian on the ground on fire. Sarah and the rest of the audience stood and cheered as the heroes triumphed over the villain who wished to do them harm. The performers turned away from their fallen comrades to address the audience. We put on this performance to show you the alliance set by the proposed Elementi Taj and the Mineralite Lord Ambassador is the only way we will win the allure against the Animalian tribes. Sarah's heart swelled. No one had ever done something so impressive to support her family. Maybe there is a chance for this alliance after all. I represent the United Republics of Elementi, the woman in white mask explained as the stagehand reset the ring for the next showing. We extended the hand of friendship to the Animalians, and they only burnt us for it. It did not stop our ever-loving hearts from reaching out to the poor creatures. I represented the Mineralite Kingdom. The man in the clockwork mask spoke to the crowd. You want nothing more to do with the war, but the Animalian tribes didn't care. And I represent the ugly monsters that are the Animalian tribes. The man leered at the audience. When I fight each of the countries separately, we're equally matched. If the Mineralite Kingdom and the United Publics of Elementi forge an alliance, we will twice the power. It will be enough to overcome the tribes. As the crowd filled out of the tent, Sarah caught bits of the conversation. My heart was beating so hard when the Animalian threw that fire at us, a Mineralite woman told her friend. You saw me. I was halfway to the door, the other woman replied. I thought the dance was too violent. I came here to get a break from the war. And here we are, talking about it again, a man in a warrior's uniform grumbled. Do you think the alliance will work like they said? A Kamdar asked the Sakaar standing next to him. They add the part where the Mineralites stab the Elementi in the back as soon as the Animalians are down? Yeah, it'll work exactly the same. The Sakaar recorded back. A messenger stood off to the side. As soon as he saw them, he bowed. Sakaar Sebastian, a letter arrived for you at the Ambassadorial halls. I thought it most prudent to ensure you received it right away. Sebastian opened the letter and started reading, dismissing the man. The messenger waited, frowned. Sarah dropped a few shills in his hand. Sorry, he forgets. The messenger smiled and left to find the next highborn to deliver a letter to. Did not expect them to get back to me tonight. Sebastian threw the letter into one of the basins of fire lining the entrance to the circus tent. I will have to leave for a meeting after we hear the king's speech. After spending so little time together, he would leave her for another meeting. Instead of telling him how she felt, Sarah said, It amazes me how graceful someone can be when they're dancing with something as dangerous and destructive as fire. The Mineralite manufactured shacks were identical in design, just like their people. The muted red brick blended with the shadows of the night and made the artificial light even more pronounced. Steam-powered gadgets and gizmos marked the so-called madmen apart from the commoners selling books, trinkets, and manufactured clothes. A man waved his clockwork arm with a dramatic flourish. Want to get rich? Just buy this little gadget and you can turn anything to shills. Sebastian tried to lead Sahara away from the man, but she wouldn't have it. You're selling a gadget that manufactures shills? You must show me this device. How does it work? Sarah asked. The man pulled a heavy machine from underneath one of his tables, put things like paper, stone, or metal into the chute, and then the machine made a horrible noise as the gadget ground the junk together. It shook with vigor and almost leapt off the table. Ding, ding, ding. Shills popped out the other end of the machine. There, look at these. The man scooped them up in his hands and poured them in Sahara's. You could be the richest Elementi on the planet. It's almost indiscernible from the real thing. Sarah commented as she turned the fake shill over in the light. Peacekeepers, this man's trying to sell a machine to forge shills. While the Elementi peacekeepers tried to push through the crowd, the Mineralite enforcers appeared in front of the shacks as if from thin air. Thank you for your service, Taja Sahara. You are no longer needed here. The enforcers were watching the man. Next time you shouldn't get involved. Sebastian dragged her to the far end of the festival grounds. Sarah spotted a fortune teller's tent. Oh, we must have our fortunes told. Sebastian stopped in his tracks. You have to be joking. It'll be fun. I'll go first. The fortune teller's voice was rough. Her arm was steady as she lit another incense stick. You wish to have me tell your fortune? Sarah took a shell from her pouch and dropped it into a small currency box. Yes, what does my future hold? Fortune teller cradled her face in her hands. You will not be married until the wrathful eye of the Creator has closed. Furthermore, you must marry only after the mercy of the Creator has shone upon you, and you have fully committed yourself to your path. You must keep a watchful eye on the ocean bed of your life. The tide will come in twice before the tsunami shakes the foundations of your castle. Anyone could know that I'm getting married soon. Tell me something better, Sarah encouraged her. A shadow has appeared over your soul. No, the shadow dances at the edge of your light. You must find and banish this impurity. The old woman shuddered and took a deep breath. Being brave is not being about being unafraid. It's doing the right thing even if the consequences scare you. Have heart, for your strength will be tested in ways you cannot imagine. You must extend your loving heart to the lost child and not flinch away from what you are most afraid of. Sarah exited the tent a little spooked. Unnerving? Sebastian asked after she exited the tent in a rush. Well, that's the point, Sarah laughed. I promise. I'll make it up to you. Want to go hunt for some ancient maps? Always, Sebastian grinned, his passion for cartography making his steps quicker as he hunted for hidden gems. A glittering figurine caught Sahara's eyes on the shelf of trinkets. Is this a genuine artifact or a forgery? Sebastian picked up the item and felt his weight. After careful consideration, he said, It is a forgery, but an excellent one. The material is from the walls of the ancient ruins. See how the edges are still raw here, not worn smooth by age. Most people don't know the figurines are a different hue than the stones of the ruins. Do you have one in your collection? Yes, although I do sell more than I keep. Sebastian walked to the next partition of the shop. Creature's breath! What is it? Sarah picked up her skirts to follow Sebastian. This partition smelled sour, and it was little wonder. The shopkeeper had filled it to the brim with maps made from animal hide. These are some of the best maps of the Outlands I've ever seen in my life. Sebastian's eyes were alight with adoration. I mean, look at these, Sahara. Try as she might, it still looked like a regular map to her. But Sebastian was an expert map collector, so this map must be something special. I think I'll get a bite to eat from one of the vendors while you look at these maps. Sebastian made a face of disgust. That does not qualify as food, my dear. It's not sanitary. Sarah crossed her arms. Well, what do you suggest that I do? Wait until we get back to eat. It's better than risking your health for a snack. Sebastian reassured her with a condescending pat on the back. He discussed an arrangement with the shopkeeper about purchasing all of the maps in the tent. The food smells so good. Roasted harnock over a spit with thousands of herb spices sold at the same price as regular street food? Maybe I'll just wait till he goes to his meeting. What he doesn't know won't kill him. Make way for the king! Make way for the king! A voice cried out. Sebastian glanced at his time stone and smiled. 7 minutes after 6. My. The Mineroid king is late. How unfashionable. Sarah rolled her eyes. They left the shopkeeper's tent and joined the forming crowd. King Dresden's personal steam carriage rushed past the crowd at full speed. It screeched to a halt and hissed as the overworked steam engine cooled. It diminished the beauty of the conventional bronze steam carriages Sahara had ridden in. Where bronze frame had been cut into a lace pattern, the silver frame was hand-wrought and weaved to form a detailed forest steam. It was the oldest functioning carriage, and each of the king's blacksmiths embellished it as the centuries had drawn on. Fragments of power stones in the frame glittered in the light. Silence descended upon the Twin Moon Festival as everyone waited with bated breath for the king and queen of Mineral to emerge. The screech of metal brushing against metal echoed into the night air. King Dresden stepped out into the mud with all the grace only a royal could muster. The lace of his frilly white shirt seemed fit to burst from his jacket. They worked glittering power stones into the silver crown atop his head, with the mastery only Mineralites possessed. His hair was black as his heart, and his eyes were dark blue and alight with a keen intelligence. Queen Nadine peeked her head outside the door of the steam carriage with wide-eyed wonder. She wore a delicate crown of silver fashioned into a wreath of flowers. Her simple light blue dress shimmered in the lantern's light. Sarah felt sorry for her, a common woman marrying to a ruthless king. One of the king's guard took off his jacket and laid it in the mud so the queen did not have to dirty her boots. Queen Nadine winced. Oh, thank you, but you really didn't have to do that. Just think about how hard that's going to be to wash. King Dresden chuckled, offering his hand to help her out of the carriage. Yes, but imagine Katrina's wrath if you stained your lace with mud. Queen Nadine lifted her skirts enough to keep them from dragging. I don't see how it's any different. Someone's gonna have to clean this jacket. I'm not allergic to mud. And with that, the queen won over the hearts of all who listened. So something really fun about this chapter is that it has the unique distinction of being one of the only chapters that I wrote from Sarah's perspective, Jaden's perspective, Sebastian's, and Milo's at one point or another during the drafting process. So I would love for you guys to share in the comments your favorite thing to see at your local festival. This could be a state fair or a local festival that you have in your area. And don't miss Chapter 5, The King's Speech. We're going to be reading that one next week. Jaden is also late. Can he sneak into the King's Speech without his father noticing, is the question. We're going to find a friend, an inspiring king, and we're going to go on a little shopping spree. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I really look forward to sharing with you another chapter next week.